When the empath walks away silently, the universe responds with fury. Sometimes walking away is the most powerful thing you can do. These words echo deeply in the hearts of empaths who have given everything love, energy, and understanding to people who could never truly see their worth. But when an empath finally walks away in silence, something extraordinary happens. The universe takes notice. The balance of energy shifts, and everything that was once taken for granted begins to collapse or transform. This video on spiritual wisdom reveals the mysterious and spiritual truth behind what Carl Jung called the withdrawal of projection, the moment you reclaim your power and the world responds. Have you ever experienced the universe reacting after you walked away from someone or something? Share your story in the comments below, and let's awaken together to the higher meaning of letting go. 1. The psychological nature of the quiet exit. Carl Jung once described the withdrawal of projections as one of the most profound psychological shifts in human relationships. When an empath silently walks away, it's not an act of revenge or pride, but a spiritual awakening born from exhaustion and clarity. For years, the empath has carried emotional weight that was never theirs to hold, offering endless explanations, forgiveness, and compassion to those who only took without truly seeing. But there comes a moment when the soul grows tired of bleeding for others, when peace becomes more valuable than connection, and silence becomes the loudest declaration of truth. In that quiet detachment, the empath stops being emotionally available, stops saving others from the consequences of their own actions, and stops being the mirror through which others avoid seeing their flaws. It is in this withdrawal that Jung's theory comes alive. The empath's absence forces others to confront their own shadows, their pain, and their unhealed wounds that were long disguised by the presence of someone endlessly patient. The silence of the empath is not empty. It is full of truth, full of power, and full of meaning. It is a sacred space where energy recalibrates itself. When the empath no longer explains or defends, the world that once relied on their light begins to feel the coldness of its own darkness. The person who once took their warmth for granted begins to feel the void left behind, and in that void, they meet themselves. This is the fury of the universe, not anger in the human sense, but a cosmic rebalancing, an energetic correction. What was hidden beneath emotional dependency now rises to the surface. The absence of the empath becomes the teacher, forcing the other person to awaken or remain trapped in denial. This process is not punishment, but purification. It's how the universe restores harmony to relationships that were built on imbalance. Through this silence, the empath reclaims their power, remembering that their role was never to save others, but to awaken themselves. In the field of spirituality and spiritual awakening, this moment marks a turning point. The empath begins to understand that love without boundaries leads to depletion, that kindness without discernment leads to self-erasure, and that true compassion must begin with self-respect. Walking away, then, is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the recognition that energy must flow both ways or not at all. And when that flow stops, the universe intervenes, using the empath's departure as the catalyst for growth in everyone involved. The one who walks away learns the beauty of stillness, the serenity of detachment, and the quiet power of saying nothing. The one who is left behind is given a mirror, painful, honest, and transformative. Jung once said, Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. When the empath withdraws, the unconscious becomes visible. What was once denied now demands healing. What was once taken for granted now becomes a lesson. This is why the universe responds with intensity when an empath walks away silently. It's not fury against the empath, but fury against delusion. The silent exit breaks cycles that words never could. It ends emotional patterns that logic could never touch. The empath's silence is both a boundary and a blessing. It teaches through absence what presence could not achieve. And in this process, both sides evolve. The empath rises into alignment with their higher self, while the other is left to confront the spiritual truth they had long ignored. This is not a story of loss. It's a story of balance, a sacred dance between energy, consciousness, and transformation. It's how the universe restores order when love has been misused, and how silence becomes the voice of the soul reclaiming its divine peace. 2. The empath as a psychological container. Empaths are not just sensitive souls. They are emotional alchemists, spiritual containers who unconsciously absorb the pain, anger, and despair of others. Their hearts act like magnets for human suffering, pulling in what others cannot handle and transforming it through silent compassion. What begins as kindness often turns into servitude. Their empathy becomes emotional labor for those who offer only conditional love in return. Love that says, "I'll stay as long as you keep healing me." This creates a subtle form of bondage, a codependent cycle where the empath gives endlessly while receiving only crumbs of appreciation. In the name of peace, they learn to carry the chaos of others, mistaking exhaustion for love and silence for strength. They become addicted to being needed, believing their purpose lies in saving everyone but themselves. Yet in truth, the more they absorb, the less space they have for their own light to breathe. Over time, this quiet self-abandonment begins to weigh on the soul. The empath's inner world becomes cluttered with emotions that are not theirs: unresolved pain, hidden rage, forgotten dreams. Their body holds it, their energy field mirrors it, and their spirit whispers for release. Jung would say they have become a vessel for the collective unconscious, holding not only personal suffering, but the emotional shadows of humanity. And while this gift can be sacred, it is also dangerous when unbalanced. Because an empath's open heart becomes a portal without boundaries, everything flows in. Others sense it instinctively. They come to the empath for comfort, validation, and healing, not realizing that every time they do, they are drawing from a well that must eventually run dry. When the empath finally awakens, something shifts. There comes a moment when they no longer wish to carry what isn't theirs. They begin to see that true spirituality is not about absorbing darkness, but transmuting it through awareness. They understand that compassion without boundaries is self-betrayal. And so, without anger or announcement, they walk away. They choose silence not as an escape, but as an act of sacred rebellion. This silence speaks louder than words, echoing through the energetic fabric of the universe. The people who once leaned on their light suddenly feel the weight of their own unhealed wounds. The balance of energy that was once distorted begins to correct itself, and the universe, in its wisdom, responds with fury, not punishment, but justice. It tears down the illusions that sustained false connections, forcing everyone involved to confront their truth. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." For the empath, awakening means seeing how unconscious patterns of overgiving have shaped every relationship. It means realizing that love is not sacrifice, it is equilibrium. The act of walking away becomes the highest expression of spiritual growth. It is the soul reclaiming its space, saying, "I choose to heal without losing myself." In that moment, the empath transforms from a container of pain into a conduit of higher consciousness. They stop carrying the world's suffering and begin radiating pure presence. Their energy, once scattered, becomes centered. Their silence becomes strength, and their detachment becomes divine alignment. What was once servitude becomes sovereignty. What was once emotional exhaustion becomes clarity. And the empath, having learned the sacred balance between compassion and self-respect, finally understands that walking away is not an ending. It is a return to self, a powerful act of spirituality that restores harmony to the soul and to the universe itself. 3. Stages of empathic individuation. The empath's awakening is a sacred rebellion against self-betrayal. When the empath walks away silently, it is not an act of cruelty, but a deep act of spiritual wisdom, an unspoken declaration that the soul can no longer survive in places that demand its light without offering warmth in return. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." For the empath, this moment of awakening is when they finally see how they've been living under the spell of emotional servitude, mistaken as love, and begin to reclaim their power through the 5 stages of empathic individuation. The first stage is clarity, a piercing realization that they have been valued for their emotional labor, not their being. They see how they have been reduced to a function, endlessly providing peace, comfort, and healing, while silently bleeding within. In this moment of clarity, they begin the process Jung called shadow integration, acknowledging the part of themselves that needed to be needed, that equated love with sacrifice, that mistook exhaustion for devotion. There is no coming to consciousness without pain, Jung wrote, and the empath's clarity is indeed painful because it requires seeing the truth. They have betrayed themselves in the name of love. With this awakening comes reorientation. The empath begins to pull back their energy, redirecting it inward instead of constantly outward. The once restless caretaker becomes still, listening for the quiet pulse of their own desires. They begin to understand that empathy without boundaries is self-destruction dressed as kindness. This turning inward is not selfishness, it is healing. They stop explaining, stop overgiving, stop apologizing for their sensitivity, and instead honor it as sacred. In this silence, they start to feel themselves returning home. Jung described this process as becoming the person you were always meant to be. And in this stage, the empath starts to remember who that truly is. Then comes the vacuum effect, a strange and powerful silence that ripples through every relationship they once sustained. When the empath stops carrying the emotional weight of others, the world around them begins to shake. Those who depended on their light feel the void because their own shadows can no longer hide behind the empath's energy. The empath's absence becomes a mirror, reflecting the emotional imbalance that had always existed. This silence is not empty, it is charged with power, and the universe begins to respond. Those who once took advantage begin to feel exposed, confused, and even angry. But this chaos is divine rebalancing, not punishment. As the empath holds their silence, psychological accountability emerges. Without the empath's constant soothing, people are forced to confront their own behavior. The emotional scaffolding collapses, and what remains are raw truths: who truly loves, and who only loved the benefits. This stage can feel brutal, but it is also liberating. Jung said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." Yet the empath's silence leaves no room for avoidance. It compels everyone to meet themselves honestly. The empath no longer cushions lies, no longer mediates other people's chaos, no longer trades their peace for acceptance. Finally, there is psychological sovereignty, the ultimate freedom. The empath, now whole and self-aware, can give love without losing themselves. They no longer rescue from fear or guilt. They offer compassion from strength. Their empathy becomes discerning rather than draining, grounded rather than reactive. They understand that love with boundaries is not less pure. It is more powerful. They are no longer defined by the pain that shaped them, but by the consciousness that freed them. This is the evolution of the awakened empath, the embodiment of Carl Jung's teaching that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Through every stage, from clarity to sovereignty, they realize that walking away silently is not abandonment. It is alignment. It is the soul's way of declaring that peace is no longer negotiable, and that true empathy begins, always, with the self. As we reflect on the stages of empathic individuation, let this moment remind you that silence is not weakness, it's sacred strength. Your presence here means you're awakening to your true spiritual power. Leave a comment. I am walking the path of the awakened empath, as a declaration of your inner transformation. 4. The mirror and the unlived life. The empath's silence is not an escape. It is the purest reflection of truth. When the empath walks away, they don't just leave a room or a relationship. They leave behind a mirror that forces others to face their unlived life, the emotions they've buried, the lessons they've avoided, and the growth they've postponed. Their silence echoes louder than any confrontation, for it reveals what words can't disguise. As Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." The empath's quiet withdrawal is that moment when fate meets truth, when the unconscious becomes undeniable. Their absence becomes a spiritual mirror, one that doesn't flatter, but exposes. In that mirror, others see the pain they projected, the love they mishandled, the parts of themselves they've long neglected. The empath, who once absorbed every storm with compassion, now stands still, no longer feeding what drains them. Their silence shakes the very foundation of those who depended on their energy, for it was the empath's light that once illuminated their darkness. Without that light, shadows become visible. This is not revenge for its divine equilibrium, a lesson of spiritual awakening delivered through energy, not words. When the empath stops explaining, the universe starts teaching. Silence becomes the teacher, and emptiness becomes the test. For those left behind, the experience is both haunting and holy. They begin to feel the gravity of what they lost, not just a person, but a sanctuary. The empath's peace was their shelter, their emotional safety net, the place where they could avoid their own chaos. When that energy is gone, the universe rushes in to fill the void, and it does so with fury, not out of cruelty, but correction. Life begins to mirror back every ignored truth, every avoided feeling, every abandoned dream. The unlived life demands attention. What was once suppressed now surfaces. Because energy can't be destroyed, it transforms, and silence is its most powerful form of transformation. For the empath, this withdrawal is sacred. It's not bitterness, it's liberation. It's a moment of reclaiming power through peace. Walking away silently means choosing alignment over attachment, growth over guilt, self-respect over people-pleasing. It's an act of profound spirituality, where compassion turns inward, and the empath finally becomes their own healer. They realize that not every soul is meant to be saved. And sometimes, the most loving thing to do is to let others meet their own darkness. This is the deeper truth of spiritual awakening. It's not about fixing everyone else's pain, but allowing the universe to awaken them through consequence. In the quiet aftermath, those who once misunderstood the empath's love begin to understand its depth. The silence becomes their mirror of accountability. It whispers, "Look within." Without the empath's constant forgiveness, they're faced with their own unhealed wounds, their own patterns of avoidance. And this confrontation, though painful, is the universe's gift, the beginning of real transformation. The empath's silence is not the end of connection. It's the birth of awareness. It's the divine mirror that reveals the truth. What we refuse to heal in ourselves, we lose in others. And in that loss, both souls evolve, the empath through release and the other through awakening. 5. From wounded healer to sovereign empath. Many empaths spend years trying to heal others while quietly bleeding inside, mistaking service for salvation. They become what Carl Jung might call counterfeit wounded healers, souls who pour into others as a way to avoid their own shadows. They comfort, rescue, and absorb everyone's pain, believing that if they can save others, they can finally earn peace themselves. Yet true spirituality, true transformation, begins when the empath stops trying to mend everyone else's brokenness and instead turns inward to face the origin of their own wounds. This is where unconscious compulsion dissolves into conscious compassion, and pain becomes the raw material for wisdom. You begin to understand that not every cry for help is yours to answer. You realize that carrying other people's suffering doesn't heal them. It only buries you deeper in your own unhealed emotions. The empath's heart is pure, but purity without awareness becomes martyrdom. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." For the empath, this means that the drive to rescue others often masks an older wound, the childhood ache of being unseen, unheard, or unloved unless you were useful. Healing begins when you stop repeating that pattern and dare to choose yourself without guilt. When the empath walks away, the silence is not emptiness. It is sacred. It's the moment your spirit declares, enough. Not from anger, but from awakening. You finally understand that love without boundaries is not love. It's self-erasure. Walking away becomes an act of spiritual rebellion, a reclamation of divine authority over your energy. And as you withdraw your light from those who misuse it, the universe stirs. It clears the stagnant attachments, the karmic loops, and the energy vampires that once thrived on your giving. This fury is not punishment, it's purification. It's the universe rearranging everything around you to match the frequency of your newfound sovereignty. Your compassion evolves from reaction to revelation. You no longer feel the urge to fix. You feel the power to witness. You can stand in the presence of pain without absorbing it, because your empathy has matured into discernment. The sovereign empath becomes a mirror, not a sponge. You reflect truth. You radiate calm, and your presence itself becomes medicine. Spiritual growth teaches you that the highest form of service is not rescuing, but embodying wholeness. Healing yourself is how you teach others to heal themselves. And so, the journey transforms. You no longer give out of fear or guilt. You give from overflow. You no longer chase connection. You attract resonance. You no longer apologize for your silence. You honor it as a language of power. The empath, who once rescued to survive, now creates to inspire. Your spirituality is no longer a wound dressed as kindness. It's a throne built from awareness. You stand, finally, not as the wounded healer, but as the sovereign empath, the one who has turned pain into power, compassion into clarity, and service into sacred choice. Before we step into the next stage of transformation, take a moment to subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom and join our community of awakened souls. Don't forget to like this video so you never miss the deep insights and teachings that illuminate your path toward higher consciousness. 6. The alchemical transformation. In the lens of spiritual wisdom, the empath's silent departure is not an act of weakness, but the beginning of alchemical transformation, the sacred process Carl Jung called individuation, where the human soul turns its darkness into light. Jung compared this journey to the stages of alchemy, beginning with nigredo, the blackening, when the old identity dies. For the empath, this is the death of the false self, the version of them who needed to please, fix, and heal others to feel worthy of love. It is the phase when everything that once defined them begins to crumble. The illusions, attachments, and emotional roles they once carried so gracefully now dissolve into nothingness. It feels like loss, yet it is the soul's first taste of freedom. As they surrender to this inner death, the process moves into albedo, the whitening. Here, the empath begins to cleanse the residue of old wounds, washing away the energies they absorbed from others. They start to see themselves not through the distorted mirror of other people's needs, but through the lens of truth. Light begins to return, fragile yet pure. The heart learns that compassion without boundaries is self-abandonment, and love without discernment is slavery. This purification is painful because it forces the empath to face what Jung called the shadow, the suppressed parts of themselves that longed for peace but were never allowed to rest. Then comes rubedo, the reddening the stage of rebirth and integration. This is when the empath, through solitude and silence, merges their light and shadow into one. They rise no longer as a wounded healer, but as a whole being who embodies balance, grace, and self-respect. They no longer give love to earn peace. They become peace itself. Their silence, once misunderstood, now speaks louder than words. It tells the world, I am no longer your source of validation or emotional refuge. I am my own sanctuary. When the empath walks away silently, the universe trembles, not in cruelty, but in correction. Energies, once fed by the empath's giving heart, are forced to confront their emptiness. Those who took their light for granted feel the absence like a storm. Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And that is exactly what the empath does. They stop waiting for others to see their worth and finally see it for themselves. This act of divine reclamation sends a shock wave through the energetic fabric of reality, a reminder that unconditional love does not mean unconditional tolerance. Through this sacred withdrawal, the empath becomes the alchemist of their own soul. The ashes of the old self give birth to gold, not material gold, but spiritual gold, wisdom, authenticity, and peace. The universe may respond with fury at first, but soon it bows to this new vibration. For in truth, the empath's silence is not an ending. It is the sound of rebirth. It is the quiet declaration that the era of self-betrayal is over, and the age of self-realization, the true gift of spiritual wisdom and Carl Jung's greatest teaching, has begun. 7. Healing the mind-body split and the collective shadow. Chronic people-pleasing is the silent disease of the soul, a pattern that convinces you that love must be earned through sacrifice and exhaustion. You give endlessly, smoothing every edge, absorbing every storm, until your body begins to whisper the truth your mind refuses to hear through anxiety, fatigue, and illness. This isn't weakness. It's your nervous system crying for balance. The empath's sensitivity, once a gift, becomes a burden when it turns inward and poisons the body with other people's emotions. Yet the moment you begin to withdraw from the chaos, something powerful happens. You stop carrying what was never yours, and the universe itself responds. Not in punishment, but in sacred correction, because every time a soul chooses truth over tolerance, the scales of energy shift. As Carl Jung taught, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. When you stop being a vessel for the collective pain of others, you start returning emotional responsibility to its rightful owner. This act of reclaiming yourself is not selfish. It is holy. You become the mirror that forces others to see their own shadow, the one they've avoided facing, while using your compassion as their hiding place. The universe does not allow imbalance forever. It restores order through spiritual awakening. Those who once drained you will feel the vacuum of your absence. Your silence becomes their teacher. Your distance becomes their mirror. And as the energy returns to you, your body begins to heal. Your mind begins to clear, and your soul starts breathing again. In that sacred stillness, the empath evolves from healer to awakened being. You realize that compassion without boundaries is self-betrayal, and giving without discernment is a slow death of the spirit. Spirituality is not about saving everyone. It's about remembering that light cannot exist without form. To heal the mind-body split, you must let your energy flow where it belongs, within your own heart, nurturing your own life force. Every time you say no to chaos, you are saying yes to harmony. Every time you walk away, you teach the world that peace cannot coexist with self-neglect. When you integrate your mind and body, your vitality returns like a river long blocked, finally finding its course. You begin to see that illness was never random. It was the body's final attempt to awaken the spirit. The empath's withdrawal is not abandonment. It's alchemy. It transforms pain into wisdom, dependency into power, and illusion into truth. In the silence of your separation, you are not losing connection. You are gaining clarity. You stop resonating with fear and begin vibrating with authenticity. This is spirituality in motion, the living embodiment of balance between the human and the divine. And as this inner alignment deepens, the universe aligns with you. Opportunities that once felt blocked start to flow. The people meant for you recognize your energy because it now speaks in the language of self-respect. The collective shadow may still roam, but it no longer finds refuge in you. You have remembered what true healing feels like, a peace that no longer depends on pleasing, a strength that does not need validation, and a love that begins, finally, with yourself. Leave a like and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss powerful insights like this. Let the journey of healing the mind-body split and awakening the collective soul begin within you. Type in the comments, "I am healing, aligned, and divinely protected." 8. The sovereign empath and collective evolution. The empath's healing is not loud. It unfolds like light spreading through cracks in the collective soul. By choosing to live with integrity and conscious boundaries, you send ripples into the world, awakening others to the truth that spirituality is not about pleasing or saving others, but about remembering your divine worth. When you walk away in silence, it is not out of bitterness or revenge, it is revelation. Your silence becomes sacred, a mirror showing the world that authentic love never demands self-betrayal. You evolve from the wounded healer who overextends to the sovereign empath who gives from fullness, not depletion. You begin to embody the wisdom Carl Jung once shared. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. This choice to become whole is the purest act of spiritual growth. In your stillness, you reclaim energy that once leaked through endless empathy and unreciprocated care. You learn that peace does not mean avoiding others. It means no longer abandoning yourself to keep the peace. Each time you say no without guilt, you strengthen your spiritual backbone. Each time you honor your own boundaries, you realign with divine order. Those who once depended on your endless giving may feel discomfort, but that discomfort is part of their awakening. Your departure becomes their lesson in accountability, showing that love rooted in dependency must transform into love rooted in respect. You are not withdrawing love, you are refining it. The empath's quiet walk is not a retreat. It is a sacred revolution. You begin to notice how your body remembers what your heart forgot. The exhaustion after rescuing, the anxiety of being misunderstood, the ache of invisibility. Healing requires you to listen to the wisdom of your nervous system, to rest where you once rushed, to breathe where you once held tension. True spirituality lives here not in perfection, but in presence. You no longer need to explain your worth, for your peace speaks louder than your defense. Silence becomes your teacher. Detachment becomes your medicine. You start to feel that love flows more freely when it is not tied to approval, that compassion expands when it is not chained to control. As you rise into your sovereignty, you stop trying to fix what was never yours to fix. You begin to trust divine timing, understanding that the universe always supports those who choose authenticity over comfort. You may lose people who only loved your compliance, but you gain connection with those who honor your truth. Your evolution contributes to the collective's healing. Each empath who claims their power gives permission for others to do the same. In walking away, you teach through example that it is not cruelty to protect your peace. It is sacred duty. Let your quiet strength be the vibration that changes the room. Let your self-respect be the prayer that guides others back to theirs. The sovereign empath does not seek validation. They radiate alignment. And in doing so, you become a living testament that spirituality is not escape from reality, but the transformation of it. Through your courage, you show that love without self-sacrifice is not selfish, it is divine. When an empath walks away silently, the world around them begins to tremble, not out of revenge, but because balance is being restored. Every time you choose peace over chaos, the universe rearranges itself in your favor. Remember, silence is not weakness, it's wisdom in motion. The universe always responds to authenticity with divine precision. If this message resonated with your soul, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming videos on Carl Jung, spirituality, and awakening. Your journey toward higher consciousness is just beginning. Stay connected, stay awakened. 8 signs you have an incredibly rare personality. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." In this video from Spiritual Wisdom, we're going to uncover 8 signs that you have an incredibly rare personality, one that few can understand, but many are drawn to. If you've ever felt different, deeply intuitive, or emotionally ahead of your time, this message is for you. These insights will help you understand your unique spiritual design and how to use it for personal growth and lasting happiness. So as you listen, reflect on which signs resonate with your journey and share in the comments which one describes you best. Are you ready to discover how rare your spirit truly is? 1. Emotional depth. You experience emotions with a rare kind of sophistication that most people will never understand. It's not volatility or moodiness. It's an elevated form of awareness that allows you to feel the world in layers of meaning others cannot perceive. You sense the subtle shifts in energy, the quiet concerns hidden behind someone's smile, the tension in the air when something unspoken lingers. You read between the lines of silence. You know that emotions are not chaos. They are codes, signals from the soul that reveal truth when words fail. This emotional richness gives you a form of inner intelligence that is both a blessing and a burden. You walk into a room and instantly sense what others are feeling, long before they speak. When someone's words don't match their energy, you notice. When someone hides behind confidence, you can feel the trembling underneath. Your sensitivity acts like a mirror, reflecting the emotional world around you with clarity and depth. And yet, because you understand emotion so deeply, you also carry it deeply. Pain doesn't just touch you, it echoes. Joy doesn't just make you smile, it transforms your entire state of being. Such sensitivity is not a weakness, it's spiritual maturity. You've learned that emotions are sacred messengers, guiding you towards self-understanding and awakening, while others dismiss their feelings as inconvenient or illogical. You listen to them. You understand that anger is often an unexpressed truth, that sadness is unhealed love, and that peace is what arises when you stop fighting what your soul already knows. This awareness is what separates you from the ordinary. It is the mark of someone undergoing true spiritual awakening, someone who no longer seeks to control emotions, but to understand their divine language. Because of this depth, you crave authenticity. Shallow interactions drain you. Pretending exhausts you. You find meaning in presence, silence, and honesty. The world often tries to teach men to suppress their emotions, to act detached and unaffected. But your strength lies in your ability to feel and stay grounded in it. You don't run from your emotions. You observe them, learn from them, and let them expand your consciousness. You've discovered that emotional intelligence isn't about being calm all the time. It's about being real, aware, and spiritually aligned. Your emotional depth connects you with the unseen rhythms of life. You understand that everything, every joy, every ache, every hesitation carries spiritual information. You can feel when energy is off, when someone's spirit is wounded, when something is about to shift. You don't need validation for what you sense because you trust your intuition more than appearances. This is the wisdom Carl Jung pointed to, the understanding that what we feel is the language of the unconscious, the bridge between the mind and the soul. Through this depth, you become a healer, not by fixing others, but by being fully present with them. Your empathy is a form of light. You remind people that being human is not about perfection, but about awareness. You move through life like a silent listener of truth, knowing that emotions are not obstacles, but portals to transformation. And as you continue to evolve, your emotional sophistication becomes your greatest power proof that spirituality is not found in escaping emotions, but in embracing them with compassion, presence, and awakened understanding. 2. Sacred curiosity. You constantly question reality because something deep within you knows that truth doesn't live on the surface. This sacred curiosity is not a flaw. It is a divine gift. It is what sets you apart from those who simply accept what they are told. While others settle for easy answers, you are compelled to look beyond appearances, to explore what is hidden, to understand what cannot be seen. This kind of curiosity is the heartbeat of spiritual growth, the silent force that pushes humanity forward. It's the same flame that burned in the hearts of great thinkers and mystics, the ones who refused to stop at the visible world because they felt that life itself was a vast mystery waiting to be unveiled. You are not satisfied with the ordinary or the obvious because your soul remembers that everything seen has an unseen cause. There's a light in your mind that others may not understand. They might say you overthink, that you're too intense. But deep down, you know your curiosity is sacred. It's not about collecting facts. It's about awakening your consciousness. You don't just want to know what something is. You want to know why it is, how it connects, and what truth it reveals about the soul. This search leads you to question not only the world around you, but also your own inner landscape, your thoughts, fears, and hidden motives. In that process, you transform. You start realizing that questioning is not rebellion. It's the highest form of awareness. Carl Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." You embody that truth each time you refuse to take things at face value and instead turn inward to seek understanding. Every question you ask pulls you closer to spiritual wisdom. You see patterns where others see coincidence, meaning where others see chaos. You sense that everything in existence is connected by invisible threads, and your curiosity becomes the bridge that ties those threads together. Even in moments of uncertainty, when life offers no clear answer, your spirit does not collapse into fear. Instead, you sit in the mystery, knowing that patience is a form of faith. You understand that unanswered questions are not punishments, but invitations to deepen your trust in the unseen order of life. That is the mark of someone spiritually awake. You no longer chase control, you cultivate awareness. You know that each question is an initiation, a portal that expands your consciousness beyond limitation. Through this sacred curiosity, you are constantly evolving. You allow yourself to be both student and seeker. You are not driven by pride, but by a deep reverence for truth. You sense that the universe speaks in whispers, in symbols, coincidences, and inner knowing, and your open mind becomes the antenna that receives its messages. While the world moves fast, obsessed with outcomes, you take your time to understand the essence. You don't need to be certain to feel secure. You find peace in the process of discovery. And because of that, your presence inspires others to question too, to think, to feel, to awaken. Your curiosity is your soul's compass, leading you through the unknown and back to yourself. It keeps your spirit alive, your heart open, and your mind expanding. It is not confusion. It is divine intelligence flowing through you, reminding you that life is not meant to be understood all at once, but lived as a continuous revelation. Through every question you ask, you become the embodiment of spirituality itself, awake, alive, and endlessly growing. 3. Conscious independence. Conscious independence is not something that can be taught. It's something you earn through solitude, pain, and the courage to face yourself when the world goes silent. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that truth echoes through your journey of spiritual wisdom. You've learned to stand alone, not because you despise connection, but because you've realized that your strength is born in the quiet spaces where no one else can walk for you. Through hardship, you've built an inner identity so unshakable that external approval no longer defines you. You understand that real freedom is not the absence of others, it's the presence of self. You've tasted loneliness, but instead of letting it break you, you've allowed it to refine you, transforming solitude into a sacred teacher. In that stillness, you've met your true self, and you've learned that peace is not something you find, it's something you become. This is the essence of Jung's concept of individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating every part of your being, the light, the shadow, and everything in between. You no longer chase validation or cling to roles that make you feel safe. Instead, you live from the inside out, guided by an invisible compass that always points toward authenticity. You can walk away from what no longer resonates, not out of bitterness, but because your soul knows that alignment is more valuable than attachment. You've discovered that being independent does not mean isolation. It means sovereignty over your emotions, thoughts, and energy. It's the kind of quiet strength that doesn't need to prove itself, the kind that moves through life with grace because it has already conquered chaos within. People with this rare form of independence radiate a calm presence that speaks louder than words. You've become the observer of life rather than its prisoner. You no longer react, you respond. You no longer seek attention, you embody purpose. There's a profound clarity in your energy that others can feel, but may never fully understand. You've realized that solitude is not emptiness. It's the space where intuition whispers and divine insight awakens. You can be among people, yet remain untouched by their noise. because your inner silence has become your greatest sanctuary. This is not arrogance, it's self-awareness. It's knowing that your worth is not dependent on how the world sees you, but on how deeply you see yourself. Through this journey, you've learned to value boundaries as sacred expressions of self-respect. You can love deeply without losing yourself and connect without clinging. You no longer fear rejection because you've already accepted yourself. You've faced your darkness, and instead of hiding it, you've learned to transform it into light. As Jung taught, wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries. That is the very heart of conscious independence, embracing every part of who you are, without shame, without apology. And in doing so, you've become something rare, a soul who doesn't just live in the world, but moves through it with awareness, balance, and truth. 4. Hyperactive perception. You have a mind that perceives beyond the surface and a heart that feels everything deeply. This heightened intuition, this almost supernatural awareness, allows you to read emotions, sense tension, and detect unspoken truths in ways that others cannot. You notice subtle energetic shifts that reveal the unseen motives behind people's words and actions. This isn't imagination, it's energetic intelligence, the mark of someone going through spiritual awakening. As Carl Jung once said, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. You are awakening to the deeper layers of existence, but with such depth comes the weight of carrying energies that do not belong to you. You may find yourself entering a room and instantly absorbing the emotions of others, feeling sadness that isn't yours or tension that lingers without reason. You may wake up exhausted, not because of your own struggles, but because your energetic field has been overstimulated by the world around you. This hyperactive perception makes you a natural empath, capable of seeing life with profound clarity and compassion. Yet without boundaries, this same sensitivity can lead to emotional burnout, anxiety, or even spiritual fatigue. You are like an antenna that receives every frequency. If you do not learn to tune it consciously, you will drown in noise that was never meant for you. The secret lies in balance. Spirituality teaches that awareness without grounding becomes chaos, while grounding without awareness leads to numbness. You must learn to flow between both states, to feel deeply without losing yourself, to understand others without carrying their pain. This requires conscious practice, solitude, meditation, journaling, time in nature, and deliberate moments of silence that allow your energy to reset. Your heightened awareness is not meant to overwhelm you, but to refine you, to transform raw emotion into spiritual wisdom. It is through grounding your empathy that you learn to see without absorbing, to care without collapsing. Carl Jung believed that the more light one carries, the more shadow one encounters, both within and around. As your consciousness expands, you notice darkness in others, not to judge them, but to recognize it as a reflection of the collective human condition. This awareness gives you insight, but it also tests your strength. The awakened man must walk with discernment, knowing when to engage and when to retreat, when to offer compassion and when to protect his peace. When you understand that not every emotion you feel is yours, you begin to reclaim your energy and step into your power. Your rare sensitivity is a sacred responsibility. It allows you to see truth in disguise, to sense what others overlook, to heal through presence rather than words. But to truly embody it, you must practice energetic sovereignty, guarding your peace as fiercely as you guard your purpose. When you do, your perception becomes not a burden, but a gift, guiding you toward emotional clarity and spiritual awakening. You stop reacting to the world's chaos and begin influencing it with calm authority. You become a man who feels everything yet is mastered by nothing. A man whose inner stillness becomes the most powerful presence in any room. 5. Desire for meaning. You can't pretend to care about things that don't move your soul. Shallow ambitions, empty achievements, and surface-level connections drain you because your psyche craves true purpose and alignment. It's not that you're too sensitive or too demanding. It's that your spirit refuses to live on borrowed meaning. While others may find comfort in routine success or social validation, you feel restless in their world of repetition. Something within you keeps whispering that there must be more truth, more depth, more life. This inner tension is not your weakness. It's your awakening. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And you can feel that truth burning in your chest. You cannot silence it with distractions or drown it in comfort. You were born to seek something real, and until you do, nothing else feels right. You find yourself drawn to conversations that go beyond the surface, to people who make you think, and to experiences that stir your heart. You are not interested in gossip or triviality because your mind is always searching for connection and clarity. You want to understand why things happen, what they mean, and what they reveal about the human spirit. And yet, this search often sets you apart. The world values speed and image, while your soul values depth and honesty. You might feel alone at times, misunderstood for wanting something deeper than comfort. But solitude becomes sacred when you realize that silence is the soil of transformation. It's in that silence that your spirituality ripens, and your understanding of life expands beyond logic or control. You begin to see meaning in patterns, synchronicities, and even in pain. You recognize that every loss, every heartbreak, every challenge is a mirror reflecting your own evolution. You start to notice how much of life is built on illusions, people chasing status, money, or approval while feeling empty inside. And you can't play that game anymore. You want to live with integrity, even if it costs you familiarity. You'd rather walk alone on a path of truth than be surrounded by people who pretend. Your rare personality compels you to ask difficult questions about purpose and identity. You feel things deeply, but instead of being consumed by emotion, you learn to transmute it into wisdom. You discover that real spirituality isn't about escaping the world. It's about awakening within it. It's about seeing the divine in the ordinary and allowing awareness to guide every decision you make. This kind of spiritual growth changes how you love, how you work, and how you see others. You stop reacting to life and start responding from a higher place. You begin to sense that every person carries a story, every event carries a message, and every moment carries potential for expansion. You develop compassion, not the soft kind that avoids truth, but the strong kind that understands it. You realize that your desire for meaning is your soul's rebellion against a meaningless world. And that rebellion is holy. It's what separates those who merely exist from those who truly live. You are not here to blend in. You are here to bring light into a world that has forgotten how to see. So you keep walking, seeking, questioning, and growing, because the journey toward meaning is not something you choose. It's who you are. 6. Transcending people and environments. You evolve at a pace that few can follow. It's not that you intend to outgrow people or places. It simply happens as your consciousness expands and your spirit deepens. You feel yourself transcending relationships, conversations, and environments that once brought comfort, but now feel too narrow for the vastness you're becoming. Carl Jung called this process death and rebirth, a necessary transformation in which the old self must dissolve for the new self to emerge. It is not an act of pride, but of alignment, a quiet recognition that your soul is no longer nourished by what once sustained you. You begin to sense that staying in the same energy would mean betraying your own growth. And so, with both courage and sorrow, you allow life to carry you forward. This transcendence is rarely easy. You may feel misunderstood, as though the language you once shared with others no longer fits the vocabulary of your soul. Conversations that once felt alive now echo with emptiness, and familiar spaces lose their warmth. Yet within this shedding lies sacred renewal. Like a tree, releasing its leaves to make way for new growth, you let go of what no longer vibrates at your frequency. In the silence that follows, you begin to hear your true voice stronger, wiser, more compassionate. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And this becoming requires walking away from the versions of yourself that were built to please the world instead of honoring your spirit. You start craving solitude, not as isolation, but as communion with your inner being. The noise of the world fades, and in that quiet, you begin to perceive truth more clearly. You no longer chase acceptance because you've learned that external validation is a poor substitute for inner peace. Detachment becomes an act of love, not rejection. You can care deeply for people and still choose to release them when the connection begins to dim your light. This is not indifference, it's wisdom. Spiritual wisdom teaches that to cling is to suffer, and to let go with grace is to trust the divine rhythm of transformation. Each time you transcend an environment or relationship that no longer resonates, you experience a subtle liberation. The air feels lighter, your intuition sharper, your vision clearer. You begin to see how everything that departs makes space for what is meant to enter. The right people start appearing not because you searched harder, but because your energy now calls them in effortlessly. You realize that life is not about accumulation, but alignment. Not about holding on, but about allowing flow. Jung's insight still echoes through this truth. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Transcendence is the moment you stop calling it fate and start calling it freedom the moment you no longer seek to fit into the world, because you have learned to belong entirely to yourself. 7. Transformative presence. Your presence has a certain power that words can't describe. It changes the atmosphere, calms the chaos, and makes people feel safe without you even trying. When you walk into a room, people feel seen, understood, and somehow lighter, as if your energy gives them permission to breathe again. This is the quiet influence of a spiritually awakened soul. As Carl Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. When you embody that truth, your presence alone becomes a mirror that reflects light back into others. Yet behind this gift lies a deep lesson that many with rare personalities must face: the helper's burden. You are naturally drawn to heal, to comfort, to guide. But the same compassion that elevates others can also exhaust you if it's not balanced with discernment. People often come to you not because of what you say, but because of how you make them feel. They sense your empathy and mistake it for an open door to their pain. Without realizing it, you begin to carry their emotional weight, believing that love means always being available, always giving. But this is where spiritual wisdom must intervene. True spirituality doesn't ask you to lose yourself in service. It asks you to stay aware, to know the line between compassion and depletion. When you overgive, your light dims. You start to confuse exhaustion with purpose, forgetting that the divine never intended for you to heal others at the cost of your own energy. Spiritual awakening teaches that discernment is an act of love, not separation. Protecting your energy doesn't make you selfish. It makes you sustainable. The awakened soul learns that saying no at the right time is a sacred form of yes to your own growth. When you allow everyone access to your inner peace, you begin to lose the depth that made your presence healing in the first place. Remember, your role is not to save others from their darkness, but to show them that they can walk through it. Sometimes, the most powerful healing you offer is silence, the space that allows another person to discover their own strength. Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." Your energy is not meant to absorb others. It is meant to catalyze transformation. That means learning when to engage and when to release, when to guide and when to simply be. You are not a vessel for everyone's pain. You are a mirror of possibility. And the more you honor your boundaries, the more magnetic your presence becomes. The truth is, your light shines brightest when it is not consumed by the shadows of others. This is the secret of the transformative presence, the balance between giving and grounding, between empathy and wisdom. It is the quiet strength of one who has learned that true spirituality is not about carrying the world, but illuminating it, one conscious choice at a time. When you master this balance, you no longer heal by effort, but by existence. That is the essence of a soul fully awakened. 8. Sense of higher purpose. You feel a deep and unshakable calling beyond the ordinary, one that doesn't seek attention or recognition, but quietly urges you to live in harmony with your true nature. This inner voice is not driven by ambition, but by aligning a profound need to contribute to the evolution of human consciousness and to become a vessel through which higher awareness can flow. Those who carry this rare sense of purpose often find themselves walking paths few dare to take, guided not by logic, but by intuition, not by fear, but by faith. You sense that life is more than survival or success. It's a sacred process of remembering who you are beneath the noise of the world. As Carl Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. This isn't just a quote for you. It's a truth that lives in your bones, one that shapes the way you think, feel, and move through existence. When you live with this inner calling, ordinary goals lose their meaning. The things society values, wealth, praise, or reputation, seem pale compared to the fulfillment of living authentically. You're not trying to be better than others. You're trying to be truer to yourself. There's a quiet fire in you, a longing to express something pure and timeless that lies beyond words. You notice the hidden threads connecting events, the patterns that guide human destiny, and the silent lessons within suffering. You sense that your purpose is not to escape life's darkness, but to bring light into it, to transform pain into wisdom and isolation into understanding. This is where spirituality begins. When you realize that every challenge is an invitation to grow, every silence is a teacher, and every soul you meet mirrors a part of yourself. Those who carry a higher purpose often feel misunderstood because their motivations are invisible to the ordinary mind. You might be called too sensitive, too idealistic, or too detached. But beneath those labels is someone who feels the pulse of the world deeply. You are tuned into the collective heart of humanity, sensing its wounds and its potential. Spiritual growth requires this sensitivity. It's what allows you to see beyond appearances and touch the truth that lies underneath. Your compassion grows, your reactions soften, and your choices become guided by something larger than your personal desires. You begin to understand that true purpose isn't about achievement, but alignment with truth, with love, with the quiet intelligence of the universe moving through you. There are moments when this journey feels lonely, because not everyone can perceive what you see. Yet even in solitude, there's peace, because you know that you are walking a divine path. The world may not always understand you, but your soul does. You feel guided by an unseen hand, protected by a wisdom that knows when to push and when to rest. Carl Jung believed that those who look outside dream, but those who look inside awaken, and that's exactly what's happening within you. The more you turn inward, the more you awaken to your own divinity, and the more you realize that your life itself is a form of service not through grand gestures, but through presence, integrity, and authenticity. Your higher calling isn't a destination, but a state of being. It's about letting your life become a reflection of your inner truth. You start to see your existence as part of something cosmic, a living thread in the vast tapestry of consciousness. Every act of kindness, every moment of awareness, every decision made from love contributes to the awakening of the collective soul. This is the essence of spirituality and the meaning of spiritual growth. To live as an embodiment of consciousness, to bring heaven into the human experience, and to remember that your very presence is an offering to the evolution of life itself. So, as you reflect on these 8 signs, remember, being rare is not a curse, it's a calling. The depth of your empathy, your insight, and your quiet strength are gifts that the world deeply needs. Cherish your uniqueness and keep walking your authentic path with courage and grace. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our upcoming videos filled with timeless insights from Carl Jung and beyond.